I'm with the company. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. As you can see on our screen currently, we're displaying our upcoming training dates. We've began a regular training schedule with 2 seminars per week, an hour each. And feel free to go onto our webpage at any time, and under the training tab, you'll see our listings and you're able to register. Just want to take a couple of minutes to give you a little bit of information on Proax for those who are not as familiar with us. Today we will be presenting on Proficloud, IIoT platform, and PLCnext. The IIoT representing the industrial Internet of Things, and it's a popular topic, and we look forward to the presentation being done by Tyler. As far as our organization goes, Proax is a national organization. We are located right across the country from coast to coast with 13 locations. We have design and build shops, 4 in total, and 3 major distribution hubs, of which Proax Oakville location is one of them. Our total employees is just over 180. And it's continually growing. I actually shouldn't say just over 180. I think it's past that a significant amount at this point. Our technical support is a key approach to the market. We use that as a differentiator. We approach our customers from a solution standpoint. So we aim always to create some partnership and to give them a little bit extra, or to try and provide some extra in finding solutions. As far as, give us 1 minute there. Yeah. As far as our technical capabilities go, just to enhance or to elaborate a little bit more on that, we are equipped with good engineering resources. Our design and build shop, as I mentioned earlier, we have 4 across the country, and the pictures give you a little illustration of some of the things that are contained in our proof of concept lab. We get involved in designing manifolds and doing various other robotic proof of concepts. The robotic portion of our operation is a significant portion, and it's something that's continually growing. And we'll elaborate on some more things that we are able to do after the presentation. And from the technical standpoint, we use events like this as a typical example where we're able to work with our core partners and present the technology to our respective audiences. Ed.
Fantastic. Thank you, Terrence. So I just want to remind everybody that if you guys do have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to leave them the questions in the chat, and we will get to them at the very end. And also, after this presentation, I will send everybody a registration links for all the upcoming events that are coming next week. And so I'm going to pass it off to Tyler to introduce himself.
Yeah, hey guys, my name is Tyler Burke. So I've been with Phoenix Contact for about 9, going on 10 years now. Let me just share my screen here, so hopefully you guys can see all that. So what we are going to be talking about today is, the IoT and the different solutions that Phoenix offers, and really we're trying to gear this towards, the future of where everything's going. So we're going to be talking about what is the cloud and what can it do for you, so to speak. It's obviously been a big topic because there's been so much change happening in our in our daily lives, over the past couple of months. A lot of unforeseen changes, but this push towards digitalization is really it's a really big thing, and obviously we want to be a part of that. So I'm going to start going through this, and like I said, if there's any questions, just put them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. So we're going to start by looking at what is the cloud and what can it do for you, right? And so when you're thinking about what a cloud is, it's literally just a server. Think of it like a computer that's just connected to the internet. The only difference between a server and a computer is that servers have way more horsepower, right? So they have a lot more horsepower, so they can do different tasks. So if we're looking at the tasks that we can do inside of a cloud, here are some of the typical examples, remote access, dashboards, users and user management, storing historical data, the services. So if we start jumping into, these things directly, let me just go back there, remote access. Remote access is one of the first ways that people really started interacting with the cloud. So this idea that you have some type of service, and then you're able to log into that service and access remote gateways. Phoenix does have a service like this. I mean, there's lots of things out there on the market, but this was really the first instance where we saw clouds being very, very helpful, because when you're doing something like this, it's much more secure than if you had an inbound connection going into your plant. You can use strong encryption, and it's one of those things where this was like one of the first instances where we saw a real use on the industrial side of, using cloud services. And it was the reason why is because it was simple, right? We could totally avoid IT and use these devices. So we're going to look more at the specific technologies that Phoenix offers a bit later. So when we're starting, we're really just going to start by looking at, what are the use cases, and then we'll look at what Phoenix offers. The next bit that people are starting to look at is this idea of having a dashboard. So when you're thinking about a dashboard, it's kind of like an HMI light. So a way of storing data, sending data to the cloud, and then visualizing it. The nice part about something like a dashboard is that it can be used, and you push a lot of data there. It's really not meant for a single machine. It's really more like, a plant function. So your entire plant can be displayed. And so when you're remotely, you can log in and kind of just see an overall health. You can drill down to specific devices if you wanted to, but the bigger benefit here is it's like a much higher level overview. I personally don't think that HMIs are going to go away in SCADA systems. This is just going to be something that kind of augments that, and it's another weapon in your tool belt, so to speak. So we've seen, like I said, a lot of people push towards this. And again, Phoenix does have a solution that we're going to look at for creating a dashboard and putting data up into, the cloud as it is, basically just making a website that has all your data in it that's visualized. The next instance, one of the biggest benefits of when you start pushing things to the internet is user management, right? So locally, it could be tough if you have to go to every single machine, every single HMI, and create new users, create new passwords every time. When you have something where it's managed on the web, it becomes a lot easier to say, okay, we have 20 people who need access. Let's give them access to these images or these web pages. We have now these other people. Let's give them access to this, right? And this whole idea of cloud computing and pushing data up into a dashboard, it's really effective for, it doesn't really help the automation team that much, but it really helps, the enterprise and the CEO level, the C-suite companies, right? So a lot of times they just want to know very, very easily what's going on, and if they need to, go and talk to anybody. The next bit, as I mentioned, is historical data. So when you're storing data on a machine, typically you'll store it for maybe a week to 2 weeks. When you start to go into pushing data into servers or into PCs or anything like that, memory is pretty cheap nowadays. You can store things for a long time. So if you wanted to, you could go back and look at like historical averages. So you can compare things like not just year over year, but like, you know, over like a 5-year span. And so it just becomes this thing of, okay, once the data is there, just tell it to last longer. We'll just have it run much longer than, again, an HMI, because an HMI wouldn't hold data that long typically. And then when we start to layer in services that are offered, this is where you're really going to start to see, you know, the next generation of machines that are going to be like, you know, the next gen AI powered type devices. So there's different things that you can get depending on the services that you're working with. So there's a handful of cloud providers on the internet. We'll take a look at them. You know, they're companies that everybody's heard of, but they're starting to do really interesting things. And one of the easiest examples is weather tracking. So imagine I run a solar farm or a wind farm. If I could anticipate the weather, I could, you know, better forecast my potential gains, right? And so things like that are starting to become more and more tied in, just because they offer these huge benefits, right? Again, like it's an easy example to say, but if I have a solar farm and I know it's going to be sunny all day on Thursday, like I can anticipate that and be like, okay, great, we can forecast potentially how much power, how much revenue we can get on that. And if there's another day where it's going to be really cloudy, maybe that's a great day where you can, you know, go in and do some maintenance because you're not going to be making as much money anyway, right? And so it's things like that where these decisions that can become enabled with existing data. And it's also then, again, tying these services in. You'll hear the term machine learning or artificial intelligence. A lot of that is really, really simple tasks where you're just monitoring things over time. So an easy example I've seen someone do for, they called it predictive maintenance, was they just put like thermocouples on more parts of their machine, and it was a big motor. And so over time, they would just monitor the heat, because if the heat starts to spike in certain areas, then they know that it needs to be oiled or that something was going, and they could, you know, preventatively go in and repair things prior to it actually shutting down. Right. So like really simple ideas, but it's just like, you know, again, sensors are becoming cheaper. And so now they could add more to it and get more functionality out of it. And the last bit is really the simplicity. So when we're talking about, you know, putting data up into a cloud, one of the challenges you're probably going to run into is you might start thinking to yourself, I have no idea what this is and how to do it. And that's really why it's so special, is that, you know, a lot of the times you need in-house IT experts. And when you start, like, you know, just paying somebody, right? I can give you an example. Phoenix pays Microsoft now for all of our Office 365. So we have, you know, Word and Excel all on Office 365. Microsoft manages that for us now, right? And so you take a lot of burden off of in-house experts. And so instead you then start, you know, basically offshoring, or whatever word you want to use, but you start relying on third parties to handle tasks then, and it saves yourself some, you know, some labor. You probably don't want to go out and buy a server rack and have to upgrade it every 3 to 5 years and keep it maintained with all this latest security patches and all these things, where when you can pay a Microsoft or an Amazon to do that for you, it might make a lot of sense. So you'll hear different terms: IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So it's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. And you can kind of see the differences there. So one of them is like literally you're renting out the hardware. Another one is, okay, you're renting out the hardware and the operating system. And then the last one is like, no, they're literally giving you everything. The software, everything's all managed. You don't have to do anything. You're just paying them for something that works. So those are the different terms you might hear when you're dealing with this idea of clouds. And like, there's different levels that you can get. Obviously, the more services you get, the more expensive it costs. But it's that whole, like, you know, you're going to weigh your own time versus how much money you can make. So the big cloud providers that you'll see in the world are Azure, which is owned by Microsoft, IBM, which is sometimes called Watson, AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, and then of course there's Google and Apple. So those are the 5 big North American players. There are other players in the world, obviously. If you go into, you know, the Oriental markets, like in Asia, you'll see all like companies like Alibaba and Tencent, and so there's lots of companies depending on where you go. But these 5 tech brands are really the biggest, with Amazon, IBM, and Microsoft being like far and away the biggest. And so all I want to point out now is that you're already using cloud services and you probably don't really realize it. So Spotify, for example, runs on Google's backend. Microsoft, surprisingly, puts Office 365 on their own cloud servers. Uber and their ride-sharing service is hosted on AWS. If you keep going into it, you'll see things like Netflix is all hosted on Amazon Web Services. And like, you know, like big companies typically are partnered with one of these cloud providers. So when we start to look at what Phoenix Contact offers, we're going to start by looking at the cloud services that we have available to us. So our service is called the Proficloud. It stands for the Professional Cloud. And we have different functions available depending on the products you're interested in. So we're going to kind of go through some of these things. So the Impulse Analytics, it's something we'll look at, and it basically monitors surges. Then we have our PLCnext, which we're going to get to at the end, which is we'll have our community and our store. We have Profinet, and then the last thing is our dashboard service. So I'll jump in here by just saying, if you go to proficloud.net, you can create an account. It's free to create an account, and you can see exactly the stuff that I'm going to be showing you today. And we're going to start by looking at the Impulse Analytics. So what the Impulse Analytics is, what you have to think, this device, it's a piece of hardware that you mount, and typically you would mount it on your primary incoming, so right as your power is coming into your building. And what it does is it will monitor if you get any surges. So it's not a surge arrestor. We do sell those as well. The challenge with selling surge arresters for Phoenix was that we found that a lot of people would just say, you know what, my power is really clean. I'm not having any issues. I don't need surge arresting. And so the challenge there is it's like, you know, we're just not getting any data to say, is surge arresting actually required? So what this device does, it actually mounts, as I mentioned, on the primary incoming power. You can mount it wherever you want, single, 2 or 3 phase power, or 3 phase with the ground. And it'll notify you anytime that there's a surge. So the connections on it are very simple. It's basically like a CT that you just wrap around something. So it's you can have it installed over existing devices. And I'll open up a web page just to show you what it looks like. But basically, it will track surges in real time, and then it will report them to you. So if I open up the Phoenix Contact web page here, hope you guys can all see that. This is our Proficloud. The Impulse Analytics, as I mentioned, it's a piece of hardware you would buy from Phoenix. You would then link it to your account. This whole linking devices is dead simple. Every one of the devices that we're going to talk about on here, basically you create an account, and then to link it for these guys, you'd click Add, and every device has a UUID, so a unique ID. You can either scan a barcode on the side of the device or just manually type in, I think it's like a 25-character code, and then it will link that device to your account. And then as soon as that device gets internet access, you're roaring. You just tell it how many lines there are, line 1, 2, 3, or 4, right? And you can kind of see here, I've hit this device with surges intentionally, just so we can see what it looks like. So Phoenix actually has a demo we can go to your office with if you're interested. And obviously not now, but whenever we're able to, we can. It's like a surge generating tool. And the reason why is to demonstrate the difference with and without surge protection. And then we can also incorporate this unit to show you that even with surge protection, you know, the surge is still happening, but we're just filtering it out, right? And so it's just, again, it's bringing that data to life. So if I click on this chart, you can zoom in and you can see exactly how big these surges are. So when we're talking about surges and what a surge is, you have to realize, of course, they're very different than something like an overcurrent or a short circuit. Surges they go up into the kiloamps. So you can see there it's 1.4 kiloamps, but they last less than a millisecond. So they're very, very fast, but they're huge amounts of power. And that's why they end up doing so much damage, is that a breaker and a fuse, those types of things don't protect against it, because a breaker, even an electronic circuit breaker, will never trip quick enough to limit the surge. So the surge would go through the breaker and hit your devices. And that's why surge protection is such a big deal. It can also cause lots of phantom problems, right? Where you have like an issue of, maybe your PLC code periodically it like starts getting weird issues and you just don't know what's going on. And sometimes that can be traced back to, your device is getting hit by surges and it's actually being damaged on on a board level, but it's just not like enough damage to just kill it altogether. So this is what the first use case we have for our cloud system. So like I said, it's totally free if you guys are interested. We have demos of our Impulse Analytic. I know that the Proax team as well has, I believe they were in the process, or they're getting some demos, so they're going to have some of these that you can then test. And the idea here is, you can rent it out, test it for a while. You can leave it installed if it's a critical thing. We do have a few customers who are working with their hydro utilities, and they're getting really sloppy power, and so they wanted this information so that they can report it. These units also have bus interfaces, so you're able to pull the data locally onto Modbus TCP and read in all the live data right into your PLC if that's something that interests you. But I think that the cloud option is really nice because now you can install something, kind of forget about it, and then get emails anytime there's a problem, or just check it periodically, maybe once a week. Just go in and see, did we have any hits this week? And if you did, what do you do? What do you want to do with that information? If you're using Phoenix Contact surge arresters, one of the other nice benefits of this Impulse Check service is that you can actually tell this device what arresters you're using. So I don't have anything picked, but you can kind of see here, there's lots of options. If I wanted to, I could add in surge arresting, and then it would tell me the life expectancy of my surge arrestor. So if I click on here, I could tell it like, okay, on this line, I have whatever, a 120 volt surge arrestor. And then as it sees the hits, it's going to say, hey, this arrestor has this type of characteristic. It can only take 10 more, 15 more of these hits, whatever. It gives you like a bar graph. And so I don't have this hooked up live. This demo's currently in our office, I believe in Milton, but it's a really simple thing to imagine. All of our surge arresters as well have alarm contacts on them. So when they actually fail, it'll trip a contact, and you can just put that into your PLC and then go and swap it out that way as well. So I think that's everything on the Impulse Analytics check. Just kind of a side note from Phoenix, if you buy surge arresting from Phoenix, we basically extend the warranty on most of our high value items. So if you're buying a surge arrestor and a power supply, the power supply gets a 5-year warranty. If you're buying a surge arrestor, a power supply, and an IPC, the IPC and the power supply both get that extended warranty. So it's a nice little add-on thing that I like to just kind of throw out there. Obviously we sell lots of devices that aren't very expensive, like terminal blocks. It's just a piece of copper, so you wouldn't need an extended warranty on that. But things with brains, our radios, our industrial routers, things like that, they'll all get extended warranties if you protect them properly. So that's the Proficloud, and there you can kind of see the plug status that I mentioned, how it'll show you the health from 100% to 0%. So the next use case we have for our cloud service is Profinet over the cloud. So I know that in North America, we use a lot of Ethernet IP. Profinet's a little bit different than Ethernet IP. It actually runs on MAC addresses and not IP addresses. And when it does that, the reason why Profinet does that is by jumping to MACs instead of IPs, it can get a much faster response time. So Profinet's actually, proven to be faster than Ethernet IP and more deterministic. The downside is that you can't route it. So with Profinet, it's very difficult to have, like a wastewater site where you have a central site and then 3 remotes and have all data going through them as Profinet, because Profinet likes to work on MAC addresses, right? Of course, if you're going through the internet, MAC addresses aren't very helpful. You need IPs because you're going to be routing your data. So what this part of our solution does is basically we have these boxes you can buy, and they end up pushing all of the data into the cloud service, and then you can pull that data. So the idea is, like, again, that wastewater plant, let me just throw it up here. They'll push all of their data into the Proficloud, and then the master station can then pull that data. And so it's like a two-way street of two-way communication. The benefit here is you don't need to set up any VPN tunnels. You don't need any static IPs. So it's very simple to get your data into the Proficloud, and then you can start to set up this type of setup. I don't really like this picture because it shows New York, Berlin, and Tokyo. The real use case here is the primary one I've seen is water wastewater sites, where you have a central pumping station and then remote pumping stations all throughout the city. So they'll all connect back to our Proficloud, and then our Proficloud can route that data wherever it needs to go. So it's the only thing we really need is an internet link. And again, there's no cost to doing this. It's just all the hardware cost. So it's a really nice and clean solution. If you are using Ethernet IP or Modbus or some other protocol, we do still have hardware devices. You wouldn't use the Proficloud. We have other solutions available. So Phoenix, being we're kind of really big on the networking side. We have lots of solutions. We're very network agnostic. We don't care what protocol you're using. We will find a way to get your data where it needs to go. And the other thing too, when you're using our Proficloud, a big idea is that everything is completely encrypted. So it's all TLS encrypted. It's all secure. You're not worried about somebody stealing your data or anything like that. And to register your devices, it's the same as when you registered them before. You can literally just click on, you can take a screenshot of something, like a picture of something, or you can type in the UUID manually. So we have two more services on our cloud that we're going to talk about. The next one is one that a lot of people find really interesting, and that is the idea of creating dashboards. So putting data up into a dashboard so that it can be visualized, and you can kind of just display things over time. So when we're looking at the dashboards, again, it's on when we look at our cloud service, our Proficloud. I'll just jump back to the web page. Here it is. Under the last button here, it is this TSD device manager. TSD, German acronym, of course, but it's time-sensitive devices. So it's basically saying any devices you have where you're basically storing data over time. So exact same as before, you would first add your devices to your account. So you can see we have a handful of different devices. Now, Phoenix has cloud gateways, so these things like Modbus TCP gateways where you can push Modbus TCP data into this unit, and then that will push it into our cloud service. Or we offer our PLCnext, and we're going to look at what our PLCnext is and what it does, and that can push data into this cloud service. And then from there, we can go into what we call our Proficloud Analytics, and this lets us display the data graphically. So you can kind of see it's loading right now. Whenever this loads, it'll drop me into a web page, and I'll just pick an example of water, wastewater, and you can kind of just see here. So the idea is you would have 10 sites all over the world or wherever you can be shipping machines, and you can really just graphically throw your data up on a screen. So like I said, this isn't really going to replace an HMI. It's much more meant to as an additional thing of you're still going to have the HMI for your control, but maybe this monitors the machine health over time. We have one customer who's looking at this solely for doing cycle counts. So they ship their machines to customers, and they want to know when their machine hits 10,000 cycles, because that's typically when they need to do maintenance. So every time their device is online and doing cycles, they can log in here and it'll give them an alarm saying, hey, you've hit 10,000 cycles. Maybe we should do some maintenance. And then this OEM actually is going to call their customers and try to sell them a maintenance package preemptively, saying, hey, we don't want our machine to fail. Can we come and do some maintenance on this? Right. And so that's really what the cloud is trying to, how you can utilize it. It's looking at your business and how you can do what you're doing today, but really how you can prepare for the future, right? Whether that's through maintenance or through added services, it's just becoming more and more competitive, and obviously thinking more and more about global markets and things like that. As devices get shipped all over the world, how else would you figure out, if I shipped a machine to China, how else would I figure out how many times it's been operated? So I'm just going to minimize this. So there we go. So as I mentioned, you add a device. Very simple. You go into the metrics. Once you add a device, it'll automatically pull in metrics. What a metric is, I didn't really explain that. It's think about tags. So when you have a tag in your PLC, it's like a real-time variable. When data gets pushed into a cloud service, it gets rebranded and it's called a metric instead. The reason why is because it's no longer real-time. It's like a snapshot of the data. So we actually, using our Proficloud, will store data for up to 5 years. But again, it's as soon as something changes, it'll take a couple seconds before that happens on our our cloud service to update the changes. And that's why it's not a real time. So if you're looking at something, and you're kind of viewing trends over time, just realize that these are all snapshots of data. It's not every single data point, because of course we're using the internet as our infrastructure. Using the cloud, it's entirely possible to augment and push data to other areas. So if you wanted to, you could have the devices on our Proficloud, and then you can push that data into the Amazon Web Services if you wanted to. So you could have two clouds talking together. So this idea of cloud technology is very, very popular. And then it's got as I mentioned, the analytics. That's what I was showing you, the dashboard. So all of the things that you saw on the dashboard are completely user editable. So you can configure them to do whatever you want. You can change the colors. You can change the way that they represent. We have graphs. We have heat maps. Lots of different tools available. And you can display like the average data or like the highest data. You can really customize that however you want. And another big thing is that because it's just running on a web page, you can actually open this up on a phone. So if you're on the go, it's super simple to just be like, let's pull up an iPad or an iPhone or whatever and view that data. So that's really why this is so handy and a really nice solution. So the last bit we have on our Proficloud that I'll just kind of mention here, if I close this and jump back to our Proficloud solutions, is there's a link in here for our mGuard Secure Cloud. So for people who are not aware, the mGuard from Phoenix is a machine guard, so it's an industrial router. This mGuard Secure Cloud, what it does, I'll just change the URL here. So this Secure Cloud, what it is it's an industrial like gateway service, basically. So you can buy devices from Phoenix, install them anywhere you want in the world, and then you're able to connect to your machines. So if I were to sign into this service right now, you can kind of see I have a bunch of different machines. There's a way of adding as many machines as you want. So you can keep adding machines. You can have hundreds of users online. You can limit access. So if I had, we have a bunch of different people at Phoenix, I can make it so that the people in the, for example, out in BC can only see machines that are in BC. So there's lots of functionality to this service, and it's completely free. We have a YouTube video for anybody who's interested. We can send that out. It's about 20 minutes to half an hour to go over a lot of the features in here. We only have 1 hour for this WebEx right now, so I don't want to jump too much into it. But for anybody interested, just reach out to your Phoenix reps. We can explain how this works, the benefits. It's a very cost-effective service. It's really nice. The service itself is actually free. You just need to buy the hardware. So that's really the key here. Is it's the hardware, and then depending on how you want to connect, we have different solutions. So if I were to, for example, create a new service workstation or just VPN builder, just try to create a service workstation, we have support for like iOS or Mac or whatever. So this service, not to be confused with the Proficloud directly, it's more for, I'm going to ship a machine. I'm an OEM in Toronto. I'm going to ship a machine to BC or to Mexico or wherever, and I want to be able to get online, program my machine, make code changes. That's what this service is for. So again, it's tied into the Proficloud. You can sign up for this service without signing up for the Proficloud as well. So both options are available. It can be standalone or it can be part of the Proficloud. But the Proficloud is free. This service is free. Phoenix right now, we don't have any fee structure for our cloud services. So it's all very powerful that way. So I'm just going to close this guy now. And you can kind of see. So when we're looking at like this, those two slides, so I thought I was done with the dashboards, but it was just comparing OEM versus customer. So the last topic that I want to really touch on here is the PLCnext. So what is it? Why does Phoenix think it's going to be such a big deal? Kind of all that stuff. So when we were debating coming out with a type of control platform, PLC is kind of a misnomer because it makes it, PLCs are typically control machine devices. This is a type of PLC. It can replace a PLC, but it does a lot more than a regular just controller. So when we were looking at the reasons for a new control platform, we were really looking at the digital world. Right? When you think about it today, we have more connected devices than we do people on the planet, and that's only going to get bigger and bigger. We have, there's been a huge growth, obviously, in IoT devices or IIoT devices, whatever way you want to look at it. There's just more devices that are smart today. And truthfully, if you go back, 10 years ago, when Apple kind of came out and was really big with the iPhone, nobody knew that that was going to change the world the way that it did. The reason why it was so popular is because it enabled a whole new way of doing things. And so really that's what we were thinking of when we were kind of creating our PLCnext platform. So we really tried to think of different use cases. And of course, tying it back to that cloud topic, we knew that there's a lot of these cloud technologies that are out there. So we wanted to make sure, okay, how can we do everything that we want, and really have a future forward facing device. So we thought of the need for something called an edge device. So what an edge device is this is something that basically can sit on your plant floor, grab all of your data, talk to your IT systems, right? So it's like that gateway between a current PLC and your next step. And so this unit is able to be programmed in Python or SQL or whatever, Node-RED, C++, C#. You can program it in all these high-level languages. Use it as an edge device and then push data, whether you want into our Proficloud or into a third-party cloud system, and really, tie in an existing application with, this whole idea of future-facing technology. And then we also thought, well, but there's also a lot of people out there who maybe they have a control platform, but they're not satisfied with it. So what if you could do all of the same programming and all the same benefits, but you could do it all, and run your control line as well. And so our PLCnext can double as a traditional PLC, as an edge gateway, or it can actually do both. So I actually show two in this picture, but it can be one physical device that is able to do both jobs. And so we're going to look at how the PLCnext is built and kind of what makes it a little bit different going forward. So if we look at a classical PLC, this is the old Phoenix Contact. We've actually had PLCs out since, I want to say, probably the 90s or 2000s, somewhere in there. We've had our first PLCs came out. But it doesn't matter if it's our PLC or a third party. This is the way that they were typically set up, is you'd have some type of operating system. In our case, it was Procon OS. You'd have I/O components, all of these components, and at the very top end, the part that as the engineer I would work with, we'd have a software package. So for Phoenix, it's PCWorks, right? For any other PLC manufacturer, you're going to have their flavor of software, right? Whatever it's TIA Portal or RS Links or whatever. So what we wanted to do then was really change the way that we're thinking. So instead of it being a proprietary operating system, Phoenix actually moved to a Linux-based operating system. So we're running Linux, a real-time variation of Linux, but it's Phoenix, our flavor, it's our own Linux. And then we started putting in our own proprietary control. So what I mean by that is we have something called our GDS, which is our global data space. And we're going to look at that a bit more. But what that is it's a way of sharing information between different programs. So we at Phoenix don't really care if you program using our tool. We have a tool called it's called our PLCnext Engineer. We don't really care if you use that or if you prefer to program in C or in C++ or in C# or in MATLAB or in Python or whatever. We're basically coming out with this idea where we offer APIs, which are add-on instructions, basically into those packages. So, for example, C would run in Eclipse, or C# would be in Visual Studio. We will let programmers program in their native environment, and then they're able to access, the I/O on here or anything else they want. The real benefit of something like this, when we compare it to like a computer, is that PLCs are reliable, right? They're real time, and they basically always do things in the order that they're supposed to do things, right? So they're deterministic is the word I was looking for. And so we get all the benefits of a PLC, but kind of like mixed with the benefits of a PC. So it's kind of those two worlds really coming together. So when we look at what makes this thing really special, it has an execution manager. So we're able to get like things like, C#, C++, or just regular ladder logic, and we can mix and match how this code runs, and we can guarantee that everything operates in the order you want it to operate in. So this is the first promise of the PLCnext, is that it's going to be, a traditional PLC, the way you think of it. So if I have something that's like, A has to happen before B, then that will always happen. So it's very reliable and very, predictable in that way. The next area, as I mentioned, was the global data space. So it's this open area where we can mix and match all of these different languages, and we can share variables. So if I have one programmer who's amazing in Python and I need him to do some weird calculation, he can go ahead and program all that, and I'll just tell him, hey, I'm going to give you these variables, and I need you to put your answer back in this variable, right? And so you can kind of get two different people from, whether it's a generational divide or whatever, and they can start working together. The big goal here, as I mentioned, was to keep people in their native environments. One of the challenges that we see is that when you hire a programmer out of college or university, they start working and you don't actually know if they're a good programmer for a couple of months, right? Because if I went to school and learned everything on Allen Bradley, and then I get hired to work for, a Siemens or whatever, it takes some time to figure out how the memory structure is set up in that device and how that software package really handles. The challenge with PLCs is that historically they've been very closed concept. Once you get good at one PLC platform, it's not really the most transferable thing. The coding part is very transferable, but where everything is and all that isn't very transferable. So with this new platform, as I mentioned, we want to keep people in their native environments. So don't learn how the Phoenix contact system works. Just, you're good in C#, use C#, and that's in Visual Studio. Being a PLC that we're creating now we're in the year 2020, security is a big deal. So we really, put in a lot of measures for security. And what that means is that for those of you who aren't familiar, there is a new standard out specifically around security. It's called IEC, or ISA 62443. And it's like a standard that comes out, and it basically dictates how devices should act if they're to be considered secure. There's different ratings. The easiest comparison I can think of with security is that security and safety are very much similar. So safety is protecting people from machines. Security is kind of protecting machines on the data side. So it's more of like a cyber thing. But with safety, you typically have a performance level or a category. With security, they're now coming out with this new acronym called security levels, or SL. And this new PLC that we have was actually built to meet this new standard, this 62443, and it meets SL3. So you can kind of see the different vectors there. So SL3 is almost the highest form you can get. So it's a very, very competent device. And when you start to look at some of the requirements, here's what our device offers, right? So one of the areas that I can kind of point out that makes this unit unique, there is no default password, right? So if I were to go to our old PLCs, for example, typically things are admin. With this new line of PLCs, what we have, when you actually get a unit, it has a password printed on it. So every single device has a unique password. And that, in doing that, that helps us get a higher level here on this 62443 standard. So kind of, as I mentioned, our vision for the control platform is having people be able to work. It can be, using this device as like a Linux box where it's a cloud controller. You can use it as a regular PLC. You can mix the two together. You can have people programming in their normal environments. You can mix and match, all of these different developers if you want to. So it's a really open and really flexible system design is what we were trying to go with. And as I mentioned, it's cloud ready. So in our PLCnext, if you check a box, so you'll have your variables page. One of the areas you can do is you can check a box, and your variables then will automatically appear on your Proficloud. So that's how you can easily get them into that dashboard simulation thing that I was doing. The software to program it, it's called PC WORX Engineer or PLCnext Engineer. It's completely free. So you can download the software completely free and fool around. So we support the standard IEC languages, which is ladder logic and function blocks. For the higher level languages, there is a license you get, and it's basically then you would have to have, you know, Eclipse or Visual Studio, and then you just add in some software from us, and then that would help you go online. So you're able to actually program and debug from your native environment, whether that's Eclipse or Python or whatever. So if anyone ever wants to see a demo, just reach out to Phoenix, and we'll set that up, or reach out to Proax, and they'll work with us and we'll set that up. There's lots of applications when we start looking at this. So we obviously have the Proficloud, we have our SCADA. It has a web HTML5 web page built on board. It supports SQL and functions like email, so you can actually send emails from this unit. It's a Profinet device. It can be a Profinet master or a slave. It can be an Ethernet IP slave currently. We're looking at adding other bus systems. The only other one that we do directly, I'm thinking, is Modbus TCP, Modbus RTU, Profibus, and Interbus. So lots of variations there. Oh, and can open. So we're trying to make this controller really speak basically every language you can think of, so it can integrate with existing machines or take over existing plants if you need to, and then really, mixing in those high-level languages gives us the benefit. If I wanted to send something to like Microsoft Azure, I could go to Azure. They're going to give me a library that I just need to include in my code, and that library is going to be in C# most likely. So I can copy and paste that, dump it into my PLCnext, and start pushing data into Azure if I wanted to. That's kind of the idea that we're looking at. It also supports open source programs. So like, I'm not sure if anybody in here has ever heard of Node-RED, but that's an open source initiative where Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all these huge companies contribute libraries to like this project, and then you can program using flowcharts. And so you can put Node-RED onto our PLCnext and run it that way as well. Another area that's really interesting is we have the ability of doing apps. So if you create code, you can actually sell it. We have an app store available. So you're able to go in and sell things, sell your code or get new code. So if I go back here, you can see the PLCnext store is one of the links. And if I click this, it's going to load a page, and I'm going to show you guys what it looks like when we have our app store. So all of the libraries from Phoenix are on here, as well as lots of third-party libraries. So we have Codesys, for example, has a software. I don't know why this is taking so long to load, but Codesys has a software package they can use. And so if you wanted to, you can literally program the entire PLCnext in Codesys, right? Being an open platform, Codesys made a plugin, and so you can program it in Codesys. We have things like, let me just see here. You can see SQL gateways. There's the Codesys one, CAN bus. There's lots of variations. One of these function blocks, I forget which one it is specifically for Amazon AWS. I think I probably passed it because it looks like these are more alphabetic. But you can get lots of different things. So we have Phoenix is creating apps. There's third parties creating apps. So it's this wide open ecosystem that is available. And obviously you can download and install these. So if I wanted to, let's say, run Codesys on my PLCnext, I can download it, install it on the PLCnext, and I never have to open the Phoenix contact software. I can do everything without ever touching that PLCnext engineer. So that was really our goal. Is it's like we want to give people a Phoenix way of doing everything, but if you want to do everything yourself, there's a way of doing that. If you're a Linux programmer, you can do everything through the command line interface. So that's the store. So I'm just going to kind of jump back here. As I mentioned, open source software. There's kind of the picture of the store, so you can see that's the one I was looking for at the top right there was the AWS IoT client. We've sold these units, across Canada already in different applications. One example was we did oil storage. Another one was stage control. Another one was infrastructure. And the reason why we were so successful in these is because we had a lot of times where people, a PLC would work, but they want to do something a little bit different. So, for example, in the infrastructure, it was like they could program it on a PLC, but they really wanted to do high-level languages. The challenge was they were using an IPC, but the IPCs aren't reliable, or the parts go obsolete every couple of years. whereas PLCs are much more reliable and they tend to last, 10 years instead of 3 to 5 years. So it's lots of like, you're bringing all the benefits of like a PC or a PLC and you're trying to bring them together. That's really what we're trying to do here. In one of the applications, somebody used Codesys, and they just because that way they could use a platform they were familiar with, but then they got all the benefits of the PLCnext. So you might be wondering, we have all these different platforms, all these different languages, how the support works. And I can show you, Phoenix has created what we call a community. So PLCnext. And our community is a place where developers from around the world can go, as well as Phoenix Contact's own developers are part of this community. And you can ask questions, get feedback, get a lot of answers. So if you're having any issues, you can post it here. The benefit is, of course, if you have any problems, you can always reach out to Proax or reach out to Phoenix. But if it's something where you're programming in, let's say, C#, and I haven't used C# in 10 years, I'm not going to be a lot of help, but we have somebody, whether it's somebody in the States or in Brazil or Germany or wherever, we have programmers across the world from Phoenix who are very smart and can help you out. Our developers at Phoenix Contacts, the guys actually making the PLCnext, are also very active in this group. So as I mentioned, you can kind of see here, we have the forum, we have the maker's blog, we have all these different tools, but if you go to the forum, our developers are active on there and they're listening to customer feedback, and we're actually changing the roadmap as we go. So like you can see here, we have this was the 21st, we have a new version of our software out, and it's telling you what was fixed. We have a roadmap published directly online. So if you were curious, hey, when is this new feature going to be implemented? We try to tell people what we're planning and when we're planning it. And like I said, we've actually seen where the roadmap has been changed because customer demand. We had a lot of people really interested in, I think it was Python a couple of years ago. So that wasn't on our roadmap. We actually added it to our roadmap, right? Things like that, where this is like less of a product and more of like a solution, and it's more of like a software platform really going forward. So I only have like 2 slides left, and it's basically just a review of what the PLCnext is, right? Like I said, I don't love the name the PLCnext personally. I would have just called it the Next or something along those lines. And that's because it's not really just the PLC. It can be an edge device, it can be a PLC, or it can be something that does both. So thank you guys for your attention. We're looking at 1:56, so just under an hour. I think I nailed it. I got to go take a breath. I'm going to mute my microphone here. There's a few more slides left from the Proax team. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'll let them take over.
All right, thank you, Tyler. And thank you to the rest of the Phoenix team for their assistance as well. Before we end off the session here this afternoon, just wanted to encourage anyone on the call who hasn't been to our website lately. We've had some changes there, some interesting things that we think would be of some benefit. We've invested heavily into e-commerce capabilities, or enhance our e-commerce capabilities, and you're able to get everything there from inventory and pricing and projects and quite a few other things. We encourage you to go ahead and take a look there. As far as our services in general, we offer quite an array of things. All of them are based around a technical component or technical capabilities and our ability to work with our partners in developing solutions. So feel free to reach out to your Proax contact, your Proax rep, and we are more than willing to do what's necessary. Whether in this case, webinars are very common, but we're able to reach out to you that way, and if necessary, we, on the right circumstances, we can look at alternative options as well. So thank you for coming in. You can see what's there available. And just as a final reminder, as far as the upcoming seminars, so you can always go to our webpage and under training and see what's upcoming. We appreciate your time, and we hope you get an opportunity to go in and register for some future seminars. So the seminars are every Wednesday and Friday at the same time, so keep that in mind. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Great. Thank you, Terrence. Before we go, I just wanted to remind everybody that I will be sending everybody a thank you email with all the registration links for the upcoming meetings, as well as a recording of this presentation as well. I would like to say thank you to Tyler for coming on today and being our guest for today. And if there's any questions, feel free to leave them now. And if you guys do think of a question later on in the future, please feel free to send them myself, and we will respond and get back to you. Well, other than that, thank you everybody for your time, and hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you.